there is a bone, hidden beneath muscle, marrow, and memory. A bone shaped like a sacred triangle, buried at the very base of your spine. The ancients called it the Sacrum, the sacred one, because they believed something sleeps there, something alive, something forgotten. They called it the serpent fire, the coiled force of creation itself. Not symbolic, not poetic, real. This is where Kundalini begins. And when it awakens, the world inside you will never be the same. But what is this hidden flame? Why does it sleep inside your spine? And what happens when it stirs? Not in theory, but in you? In this video, you'll discover the ancient truth of the bone every mystic revered. And the moment Kundalini touches it for the first time, and if you stay until the end, you may begin to feel something stir at the base of your own spine. A presence, a pulse, that isn't imagined, but remembered. This is the root awakening, and it begins right now. Hidden deep beneath the flesh, there is a bone shaped like a downward triangle, solid, heavy, anchored at the base of your spine. Today, science calls it the Sacrum, a Latin word meaning the sacred one, but long before science, mystics already knew. They believed this was no ordinary bone. It was a temple, the foundation stone of the human body, the seat of life itself. In ancient Egypt, it was known as the throne of Osiris, the place where resurrection begins. In Vedic India, it was the base of Shakti, the coiled feminine power sleeping in silence. The early Christians called it the foundation of the temple not made with hands. Even the Greeks believed the soul lingered in the sacrum after death, long after other bones had decayed. But why? Because something lives there. Not a structure but a force, a current, a spark of divine memory buried in the body. They said this bone was the starting point of the soul's ascent, that until this gate was opened, higher realms remained out of reach, that all spiritual journeys begin here, not in the sky, not in the heavens, but in the bone beneath your pelvis. And it makes sense. Every building must have a foundation. Every tree must root before rising. Every flame must have a spark. The Sacrum is that spark. And it is no coincidence that the Kundalini, the serpent of sacred fire, is said to sleep curled around this bone, wrapped 3.5 times like a coiled spring. She waits, not in the brain, not in the heart, but at the very base. For what? Not for knowledge, not for status, but for truth, for readiness, for the moment the soul whispers, I remember. Because the Sacrum does not open through force. And once it opens, nothing stays the same. If you feel something ancient stirring at your root, now is the time to remember. Subscribe to continue the journey upward through every gate that was once closed. She waits, not asleep but listening, not gone, but hidden, coiled 3.5 times around the base of your spine, not by accident but by design. This is Kundalini, not a metaphor, not a symbol, a living force, a current of awareness curled in on itself. Like a serpent, silent and still, she rests at the gate of your being, beneath the Sacrum beside the root, watching, waiting, remembering. The sages of India called her Shakti, the sacred feminine power that births stars and shatters illusion. She is not energy in the way electricity is energy. She is intelligent fire, aware, alive, and deeply patient. When she begins to stir, you do not imagine it. You feel it. A flutter at the base of your spine. A warmth that has no source. A pressure without weight. Some describe it as a hum, vibrating deep in the pelvic bowl. Not painful, but powerful. Others feel a pulse that moves like breath, but comes from beneath the breath. This is the beginning of inner ignition. When Shakti first turns in her sleep, the body knows. The nervous system flinches, then softens. The breath changes, and something ancient, buried in bone and shadow, begins to glow. In yogic science, this zone is known as the Mula Triangle, formed by the Sacrum, coccyx, and perineum. It is the base of the Sushumna, the central channel through which Kundalini rises. But before she climbs, she coils tighter, gathering force, refining flame, preparing for ascent. Because Kundalini does not rise on demand. She rises when the vessel is ready, when the soul consents, when the foundation is strong. And once she rises, there is no going back. The journey has begun, and the serpent remembers the sky. Before Kundalini can rise, she must pass through the first gate. Not a door, not a ritual, but a route. A chakra known as Muladhara. In Sanskrit, Mula means root, and Adhara means support. This is your base, your foundation, your anchor to this world. Muladhara sits at the perineum, the space between the genitals and the anus. It governs the legs, the feet, the bones, the colon. It is where the human meets the earth, where spirit first touches flesh. When you were born, this was the first chakra to awaken, and for many, it is the one that never fully opens again. Why? Because Muladhara is where fear lives. Not surface fear, but primal fear. The fear of being unsafe and loved unworthy. The fear of being abandoned by life itself. This fear is not yours alone. It is ancestral, passed down through blood and memory. Every famine, every war, every time your lineage fought to survive, it lives here, at the base of your spine, in your posture, in your breath, in your gut reactions, stored like echoes beneath awareness. So when Kundalini reaches this gate, she does not just awaken energy. She awakens everything you buried to feel safe. Suddenly, old memories arise, emotions with no name, dreams that feel like warnings, and the body begins to tremble, not in weakness, but in release. You may feel heat in your legs, a buzzing in your feet, a vibration in the tailbone. You may cry for no reason, shake without understanding, or feel a deep urge to lie on the ground, as if the earth itself is calling you home. This is not regression. A return to the root, to the place before fear, before names, before history. Because Muladhara is not just survival. It is the first memory of wholeness. The moment the soul says, I am safe not because the world protects me, but because I stand in truth. This is the first gate. And once it opens, the serpent begins to climb. When Kundalini touches the root, something stirs that words can't fully capture. But something deep begins to vibrate, not on the skin but within the bones, not in thought but beneath memory. Many feel a subtle heat, rising from the base of the spine like a thread of smoke. Some describe it as a hum, a soft buzzing, almost like the earth itself is whispering inside them. This is not imagination. It's not placebo. It's the nervous system responding to something ancient, to a current older than language. When the root awakens, your sense of I am begins to shift. You no longer feel like a floating mind, trapped in thought. You feel like a living body, a temple that's been reconnected to the earth. Your breath drops slower. Your spine feels heavier but grounded. There may be tingling in the legs, a strange clarity in your senses. Colors deepen, sounds expand, time slows. Why? Because Muladhara is not just a chakra. It's the foundation of perception. Until it awakens, every higher experience remains theoretical. But once it activates, you know something is happening. You may dream of roots of snakes, of deep red symbols. You may crave nature trees, soil, sunlight. Some feel called to sit on the earth, to press their spine into stone, to ground the awakening into matter. And as this happens, memories may rise, not from this life, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere cellular, as if the body is remembering its origin story, not as flesh, but as light in form. This is why grounding is sacred. It's not just calming. It's a reconnection with the truth, that you are never separate. And the moment you feel that truth, not in your mind, but in your body, the serpent knows it's safe to rise. Because Kundalini doesn't just need energy. She needs stability. A root strong enough to hold the fire. And that fire is growing. In the next part, we go deeper into the mystery. What truly lives inside Muladhara, and what happens when you realize it's not just a chakra, but the seed of your soul? Most people think the root chakra is about survival. And it is. But that's only the surface. Beneath survival, beneath the fear of not having enough, there's something older, something sacred, a memory. The sages taught that Muladhara is the first place the soul touches down when it enters the body. Not the brain, not the heart, but the root. This is where the light anchors into flesh, where the eternal becomes temporary, where the formless takes form. And in that moment, something is planted, a seed, a spark, a code. The ancients called it the Bindu seed, the original imprint of your divine identity, a memory of wholeness, buried beneath all the survival stories you've inherited. But over time that memory gets covered by fear, by rules, by trauma passed down through blood. You forget the root is holy. You begin to associate it with shame, with the body, with the base. You start climbing toward the higher, thinking heaven is somewhere above. But the soul does not rise by rejecting the earth. It rises by rooting into it. This is the paradox. The deeper your roots, the higher you can rise. When Kundalini stirs the root, she's not just lighting up energy, she's reactivating the seed, the ancient code stored in your base, the one that says, you are not just here to survive, you are here to remember. And in that remembrance, a new kind of power is born. Not control, not domination, but presence. The kind of presence that doesn't flinch when the world shakes. Because it knows, I belong to the earth, but I come from beyond it. This is not just the base of the spine. It's the base of becoming. And once that seed begins to grow, the serpent begins to rise. Not in chaos, but in perfect rhythm with the soul. In the next part, we'll explore why this root is often blocked, and why most people never awaken it in their lifetime, even if they meditate, pray, or seek the light. For most people, the root remains closed, not because they are lazy, not because they are unworthy, but because they are afraid, and they don't know why. From the moment we are born, we are trained to disconnect from the root. Sit still. Be quiet. Don't touch. Don't feel. Don't trust your body. We are taught to live from the neck up, to think, to analyze, to achieve, but never to drop down, never to feel the ground. The modern world builds towers, but forgets foundations. It praises intellect, but shames instinct. And so, we float, untethered, anxious, always searching, never feeling home. This disconnection becomes a lifestyle, then a culture, then a system. And the deeper truth, it was designed that way. Because when you are disconnected from your root, you are easy to control, easy to sell to, easy to scare. You need permission. You seek safety in systems. You forget you are the source. The root, if fully awakened, would make you unshakable, grounded, unprogrammable. That's why it's the most suppressed chakra of all. That's why sexuality is shamed, why nature is feared, why silence is avoided. Because all of these lead you back to the root, and the root leads you back to yourself. But here's the danger. When Kundalini rises through a root that is unstable, the energy becomes scattered. It surges without direction. It overwhelms instead of awakens. That's why the foundation must come first. That's why Muladhara must be remembered. In the next part, you'll discover what happens when the root finally awakens fully, not just as a concept, but as a living experience that melts fear into power. There comes a moment when the ground beneath you no longer feels separate. It breathes with you, holds you, becomes you. This is what happens when the root awakens, not partially but fully. It begins as stillness, a silence that isn't empty, but full of presence. Your breath drops into your belly. Your spine feels supported by something ancient and alive. And then something clicks. The fear is gone. Not because danger disappeared, but because you are no longer dependent on the world to feel safe. You remember, I am safe because I exist, because I belong, because I am. The yogis called this state tasthira, unwavering steadiness. The Taoists called it returning to the root of heaven. The mystics called it the great grounding. You feel it in your bones. Not a concept, a certainty. In this state, your nervous system recalibrates. Fight or flight softens. Your body no longer clenches with anticipation. Your thoughts slow not into sleep, but into awareness. The earth becomes an ally. You'll feel its rhythm in your feet, its pulse in your breath, its memory in your spine. This is when Kundalini begins to rise naturally, not forced, not chased, but invited, because now, the root is no longer a barrier. It's a portal, and through that portal, the serpent climbs, not in chaos, but in grace, not in fire, but in rhythm. You'll become the tree, rooted deep, and rising wide, unshakable. And once you taste this state, nothing external has power over you again. Not fear, not opinion, not systems, not past. Only truth, only presence, only the next breath. And in the final part, we'll explore how to anchor this awakening into your daily life and walk forward not just as someone who believes, but as someone who knows. Kundalini does not respond to force. She responds to readiness, to stillness, to truth. If you felt something stir within you while watching this, know this: you are not alone, and you are not broken, but you are being called. So how do you answer? You start where all things begin, the root. Not with effort, but with attention. Bring your breath to the base of your spine. Feel the contact between your body and the earth. Walk barefoot. Eat slowly. Sleep deeply. Not as rituals, but as remembrance. Because grounding is not a technique. It's a return. A sacred reunion between soul and soil. Listen to your body, not as an object, but as a living temple. When fear rises, don't fight it. Feel it. Breathe through it. Let it speak, then let it pass. Because fear is not your enemy. It is the echo of the unloved. And love is what opens the root. There is no rush, no race, no destination. Kundalini does not rise in haste. She rises in rhythm, and that rhythm begins with the deep trust that you are supported, not just by belief, but by the ground beneath your feet. Honor that, and the serpent will know she can rise. Let your practice be simple. Let your presence be enough. Let the earth remember you, and you will remember her. Because the root is not just where you begin, it is what carries you forward. Every step, every breath. And if this message resonated with something deep within you, share your thoughts with us. Sometimes your story becomes the key that helps another soul awaken. Let us know the moment you first felt the ground shift. And in the next chapter of this journey, we'll follow Kundalini as she moves upward, into the waters of emotion, creation, and desire, to the second gate, to the next memory. Until then, breathe deep, stand tall, and trust your root.